My mother lost custody of my 3 sisters after her ex-boyfriend hurt them. Then 5 years later, she wanted to get them back, but blamed me for turning everyone against her. I still remember the day everything changed. I was 23 years old, sitting in the cramped kitchen of my grandmother's house in Indianapolis, Indiana. My name is Lucas. I never really got to be a kid in that house. Not after what my mother put us through. My mother wasn't always this broken woman, but she was always a mess. I don't remember a time when she wasn't either in love with the wrong man or caught up in some new drama. When I was a kid, I used to hope she'd change. I'd tell myself if I just stayed out of trouble, if I was good enough, she'd notice me. She'd love me the way she was supposed to, but that never happened. Instead, she fell for this guy, Dennis, who turned out to be the worst of them all. He was charming at first, the kind of guy who'd crack jokes and buy cheap flowers from the gas station. But behind closed doors, he was a monster. He didn't just yell, he tore into us, especially my sisters. Little things would set him off. A noise in the hallway, a laugh that was too loud, a toy left out of place. When I turned 18, I tried to move out, but my sisters were still stuck in that house. My brother, Noah, and I scraped together enough to start community college, both of us taking night classes, both of us working every chance we got. But that didn't stop the worry. We go home to find bruises on the girls, or hear them crying in the middle of the night, and no matter how hard I tried to tell myself it wasn't my fault, it felt like it was. Things finally blew up when my mother lost custody of the girls. I'll never forget that day. I was at school, working on an essay in the library, when Noah called me. His voice was shaking. Lucas, she lost them. She lost them. My legs gave out right there in the stacks. Noah and I were the ones who convinced our grandmother to take the girls in. We practically begged her, even though she was already 70 and had her own health problems. We promised her we'd help with everything. We'd work as many hours as we needed, make sure the girls had what they needed, anything to keep them safe. Noah, somehow, managed to finish college. He always had a better head for books than I did. He got a decent job, steady pay. Me? I tried. God, I tried. But the money was never enough. I dropped out after my second year, picking up shifts at the grocery store and odd jobs wherever I could. Every time I looked at my sisters, Alina, Olivia, and little Sophie, I felt like I'd failed them. I was supposed to be the big brother, the protector. Instead, I was the dropout working late shifts to keep the lights on. But at Grandma's house, the girls thrived. She made it feel like a home. They had home-cooked meals and quiet nights with books and cartoons instead of screaming matches and slam doors. They had birthdays with homemade cakes and Christmas trees that didn't get knocked over in a drunken rage. Watching them finally smile, I felt both proud and ashamed. They deserved that peace, and I couldn't give it to them. I tried to hide how much it hurt me, how much I carried the guilt. Noah used to tell me, "We're doing our best, Lucas. That's all we can do." But at night, lying in my bed in that cold back room, I'd replay everything in my head, the bruises, the fear in Alina's eyes, Olivia's shaking hands, Sophie's cries. And every time, I'd ask myself, why wasn't I enough to save them? Why couldn't I have done more? Back then, the only thing that kept me from falling apart was the promise I made to myself that no matter what happened, I wouldn't let my mother hurt them again. Grandma was their safe place now. She was the anchor we'd all been missing, the one person who never once turned her back on any of us. Even on the days I felt like the biggest failure in the world, she'd pat my hand and say, "Lucas, you're doing good. You're doing what a brother's supposed to do." I wanted to believe her. Some days I almost did. But the guilt, it was always there, just under the surface, waiting to remind me that I had been too late to stop the damage. And that was something I'd have to live with for the rest of my life. It was about 2 months after my 23rd birthday when I got the email from my mother. I was sitting on my bed in Grandma's guest room, my laptop propped on my knees. I almost didn't open it. The subject line was simple, family. But seeing her name in my inbox made my stomach clench. She wrote that she wanted to see us, all of us. She said she wanted to fix things, to heal, to start fresh. She talked about family therapy, about making amends. She even wrote, "I know I hurt you, but I want to make things right. For the girls. For all of you." I didn't believe her. Not for a second. But I didn't delete it either. I just sat there, reading it over and over, feeling like I was 10 years old again, hoping she'd really mean it this time. Part of me wanted to reply right away, to tell her she was too late. Another part of me didn't want to say anything at all. For about a week, I kept the email to myself. I didn't want to dump that on my sisters. Alina was just starting high school. Olivia was finally coming out of her shell. And Sophie was still young enough to have a chance at forgetting some of the worst parts. I didn't want to drag them back into the mess. But the longer I sat on it, the more it felt like a weight on my chest. One evening, I finally told Grandma. We were in the kitchen. She was making her famous beef stew, the one she always said cured anything. I leaned against the counter, the email open on my phone. "She wants to see us," I said quietly. Grandma's wooden spoon stopped mid-stir. She didn't look at me right away, just kept stirring the pot. "What do you think about that?" she asked, her voice careful. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't trust her, but I don't know. Maybe the girls should decide." Grandma nodded. "They're old enough to have a say." She looked at me, her eyes soft but firm. "Lucas, you've carried enough for them. Let them have a choice." So that weekend, we all sat around the table, me, Noah, the girls, and Grandma. I told them about the email. I tried to keep my voice even, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Alina looked down at her hands. Olivia bit her lip, and Sophie just clung to Grandma's arm like it was the only safe thing in the world. Noah's face was hard. "She wants to see us," he said, like he couldn't believe it. After everything? He didn't say it out loud, but I knew he was thinking about all the nights we spent covering the girls' ears so they wouldn't hear the screaming, all the times we had to clean up the pieces after our mother's mess. The girls were quiet for a long time. Finally, Alina looked up. "I don't know if I want to see her," she said softly, "but maybe we should, just to see if she's really changed." Olivia nodded, and even little Sophie gave a small, unsure shrug. They were young, but they were stronger than I ever gave them credit for. Noah let out a long breath. "If they want to see her, I'll go. But I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it for them." I nodded. That was how we always were, me and Noah, the protectors, even when we didn't have a clue how to do it right. A few days later, I emailed her back. Short and to the point. "We'll meet, but the girls get to decide if it goes anywhere. We're not promising anything." She replied almost immediately, all excited and hopeful. She suggested a small diner in town, said it was quiet and wouldn't be too overwhelming. I could almost hear her voice in those words, sweet and soft, pretending to be the mother we needed her to be. The day we met her, it was cloudy and cold. I remember the sky looked like it was about to crack open. The diner was one of those old places with cracked vinyl booths and the smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air. I got there early, trying to settle my nerves. Noah was next to me, staring out the window like he'd rather be anywhere else. When she walked in, it was like stepping back in time. She looked older, more worn down, but she still had that same bright smile she always used to charm people. She hugged the girls first, her arms tight around them, and for a second, I let myself believe she really meant it. But as soon as we sat down, she started in on it, how she wanted the girls to move back in with her, how she changed, how she had a new apartment, a steady job, a fresh start. She kept glancing at me like she was waiting for my approval, like she needed me to say it was okay. I watched my sisters squirm in their seats, saw the way Alina's eyes darted around the room, how Olivia fidgeted with the straw wrapper, how Sophie's little shoulders tensed up. I tried to change the subject, asked her about her job, about her new place, but she kept circling back. "I just want my family back," she said, her voice soft and shaky. "I know I messed up, but we're still family, aren't we?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because in that moment, I didn't know what family meant anymore. I just knew I was there for my sisters. That was the only promise I could make. When lunch was over, we left the diner in silence. Noah didn't say a word as he drove us back to Grandma's. In the rearview mirror, I could see the girls huddled together, their faces pale and their eyes tired. And even though I didn't want to admit it, I could feel it in my chest, that old hope, the part of me that still wanted to believe she could change. That night, my phone buzzed with another email from her. She said she was hurt that I didn't hug her goodbye, that I didn't even say, "I love you." Before we left, she said I was setting a bad example for the girls, that I was poisoning them against her. I stared at the words until my eyes burned, and all I could think was, I'm not the one who poisoned them. I'm just the one trying to keep them safe. The day we met her at that diner felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. As soon as my mother walked in, the air in the room changed. She had this way of sucking all the air out of a place, making it hard to breathe. Her smile was too bright, too eager, like she thought if she just smiled enough, we'd forget everything. She slid into the booth across from us, her hands fidgeting with the napkin holder. "I'm so glad you all came," she said, her voice soft, almost shy. "I've missed you more than you know." The girls said nothing, their eyes downcast. Noah shifted in his seat, his jaw tight, but he didn't say a word. I tried to keep my face neutral, but inside I felt like I was back in that house, a kid again, bracing for whatever storm was coming next. The waitress came by and took our orders, her smile polite but distant. I wondered if she could feel the tension, if she could see the way our mother's eyes kept darting between us like she was checking to see if her performance was working. She started talking about her new job at a bakery, how she loved the early mornings, the smell of fresh bread. She laughed too hard at her own stories, her eyes shining like she was on the verge of tears. I wanted to believe her, to believe that maybe she really had changed, but I knew better. Then she turned to the girls. "I was thinking," she said, her tone light, like she was talking about picking out new curtains. "Maybe you could come stay with me for a while, just to see how it feels to be a family again." Alina froze. Olivia's mouth fell open, and Sophie's fingers gripped the edge of the table. Noah's hand shot out and tapped his coffee cup, the ceramic clinking against the table, a sharp sound that made us all flinch. "Mom," I said carefully, my voice tight, "let's not rush into anything. The girls are happy with Grandma. Let's take this slow." She smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Lucas, I know you think you're protecting them, but they're my daughters. They belong with me." Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but there was a steel edge in it. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't about the girls. This was about her need to be seen as the mother she'd never really been. "I'm not saying they don't belong with you," I said slowly, "but it's their choice, not yours." My voice cracked a little on the last word, and I hated that. I hated how even now, after everything, she could still make me feel like a scared kid. The rest of the meal was a blur. She kept talking, but I barely heard her. My mind was back in that house, hearing her yell at me for being too loud, too messy, too much. I remembered how she used to say I was the reason everything was falling apart, that if I was better, she wouldn't be so angry all the time. Noah didn't say much. He just watched her with this look in his eyes, not anger, exactly, but something harder, something like cold fury. The girls were quiet, barely touching their food. I could see them shrinking into themselves, their shoulders hunched like they were trying to disappear. When it was finally over, we stood outside the diner in the cold afternoon air. My mother hugged the girls again, her arms tight around them, and I saw how Alina's face went stiff, how Olivia's eyes looked everywhere but at her. Sophie didn't hug her back at all. I didn't hug her either. I couldn't. She looked at me with those bright, hopeful eyes, and I just nodded, my hands shoved deep in my jacket pockets. "I'll be in touch," she said, her voice trembling. "We'll figure this out." I didn't answer. That night, she emailed me again. Her words were sharp this time, bitter. She said I was setting a bad example for the girls, that I was teaching them to be cold, to shut her out. "You didn't even hug me, Lucas," she wrote. "You didn't say goodbye. You're turning them against me." I read her words over and over, my fingers gripping the edge of my laptop until my knuckles went white. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her she didn't get to play the victim anymore. But I didn't write back, because nothing I said would matter. She would twist it, like she always did. And in the quiet of that night, I realized something that both hurt and set me free. I wasn't responsible for her feelings anymore. My job was to protect my sisters. That was the only thing that mattered. The therapy office was small and smelled faintly of lavender, like someone was trying too hard to make it feel safe. The walls were a soft yellow, the kind of color that was supposed to calm you down, but all it did was make me feel like I was suffocating. There were 5 of us in that room, me, Noah, my 3 sisters, and her. The therapist was a woman named Dr. Sims, her voice calm and even as she welcomed us in. "I'm glad you're all here today," she said, like she didn't see the way Noah was sitting stiffly in his chair or the way Alina kept her eyes glued to her lap. My mother smiled, that same bright smile she'd worn at the diner, and said, "I just want to start over. I want my family back." The first few minutes were awkward, filled with forced small talk and half-hearted attempts to make it seem like we were all okay. My mother kept talking about how she was doing better now, how she was sober, how she had a job and a little apartment with lace curtains. She said it like she was reciting lines from a script, her voice soft and trembling. Noah didn't say anything. He just stared at her, his jaw set like he was biting back every word he really wanted to say. The girls shifted in their chairs, their shoulders tense, but they didn't interrupt. They didn't know how. Finally, Dr. Sims asked us to talk about why we were there. My mother spoke first, her eyes wide and pleading. "I know I wasn't perfect," she said, "but I did the best I could. Dennis, he was the problem. I was trying to protect you kids, but it was so hard." She let out a shaky breath, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she'd pulled from her purse. I felt my stomach clench. "You're saying you protected us?" I asked, my voice calm, but my hands were shaking in my lap. "You didn't protect us. You left us there with him. You let him hurt them." Her eyes flicked to me, her lips pressed together. "I didn't know," she said softly. "You don't understand how hard it was for me. He was controlling. He was dangerous. I tried to get away." Noah snorted. It was a short, bitter sound that cut through the room. "You didn't even try," he said, his voice low. "You were too busy pretending everything was fine." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Noah, that's not fair," she said. "I did what I could. You have no idea what it was like for me." And that was it. Something in me snapped. My voice came out sharper than I meant, but I didn't care. "You're not the victim here, Mom," I said, my heart pounding. "We were the kids. We were the ones who needed you, and you weren't there." She shook her head, her tears spilling over now. "You've always twisted things, Lucas. You're poisoning the girls against me. You're making them hate me." I felt something deep in my chest, years of anger and hurt and guilt, and it all boiled over. "No, you did that yourself," I said, my voice shaking. "You let Dennis scream at them, hit them. You let him lock them in closets because they were too loud. You let him make them feel like nothing. And you stood there and watched." The room went silent. Even Dr. Sims looked like she didn't know what to say. My sisters were crying now, soft, muffled sobs that made my chest ache. Noah just sat there, his face pale and tight, like he was holding back every feeling he'd buried for years. My mother's face crumpled. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I tried. I did everything I could." "You didn't," I said, my voice cold and final. "You chose him over us. And now you're trying to rewrite history like we're too stupid to remember what really happened." For a long moment, no one said anything. My mother wiped her tears and looked at the girls. "Alina, Olivia, Sophie, you know I love you, right? You know I was doing my best." But they didn't say a word. They just sat there, their hands clasped together, their eyes downcast. Dr. Sims finally cleared her throat. "Maybe we should take a break," she said gently. But I shook my head. "No," I said. "I'm done. I've been done for years. I'm not going to let you keep lying to them, or to me." My mother looked at me like I was a stranger, her face pale and empty. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't a scared kid anymore, begging for her to see me. I was done being the one who held it all together. When the session ended, we all walked out into the cold afternoon air. My sisters huddled close to each other, their eyes red and puffy. Noah put his arm around them, his face still set in that hard, determined line. I walked a little ahead, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. Like maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward without her shadow hanging over us. A couple of days after that therapy session, I got an email from my mother. The subject line was my side of the story. I almost didn't open it. I knew what she was going to say, but curiosity got the better of me, and I read it anyway. It was everything I expected. A long, twisting rant that started out sweet, full of, "I love you," and "I miss you," but quickly turned sour. She said I was ungrateful, that I didn't understand how hard she had it, that I was turning the girls against her. She said I was no better than Dennis because I was manipulating my sisters to hate their own mother. She ended it by saying she was the real victim, that she deserved forgiveness, that she deserved her children's love. I closed the email and just sat there, staring at the wall. My hands were shaking, and for a moment, I wondered if she was right, if maybe I was the problem, if maybe I was the one tearing the family apart. But then I thought about that therapy session, about the way my sisters had cried, about the way Noah's jaw had been clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. I thought about all the nights we'd spent huddled together in Grandma's living room, trying to feel safe. And I knew I wasn't the problem. She was. But the fallout came fast and hard. My mother must have called everyone in the family because the messages started flooding in. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them telling me I was wrong, that I was being cruel, that family forgives, that I needed to apologize to my mother. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "Lucas, your mother loves you. Lucas, you're being unfair. Lucas, we're all worried about you." It felt like a wave crashing over me, and for a moment, I let myself wonder if they were right, if I really was just bitter and angry and wrong. I talked to Noah about it. We sat on the back porch at Grandma's house, the air cold and crisp. "I don't know, man," I said, my voice low. "What if they're right? What if I'm the one who's messed up?" Noah shook his head. "You're not," he said firmly. "You're the only one who's ever told the truth. You're the only one who's ever stood up for them, for us." The girls came out a few minutes later, Alina curling up on the porch swing, Olivia leaning against the railing, Sophie snuggling into Noah's side. "We don't want to see her again," Alina said softly. "Not after what she said in there. Not after everything." I nodded. I felt something settle in my chest. Not peace, exactly, but something close. Something that felt like clarity. "Okay," I said. "Then we're done." That night, I sat at my desk and wrote my mother a letter. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her exactly how I felt, how I'd spent my whole life trying to protect my sisters, how I'd watched her fail them again and again, how I wasn't going to let her twist the story anymore. I told her that this was it, that I was done. When I finished, I read it over once, then hit send. My hands were still shaking, but it wasn't from fear this time. It was from relief. After that, I blocked her number, blocked her on social media, blocked everyone who kept telling me to forgive her. I was done, truly done. The next day, I sat with my sisters in Grandma's kitchen. We talked about everything and nothing: school, work, stupid shows we'd been watching. It felt normal. It felt good. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next disaster. I didn't feel like I was waiting for her. Noah caught my eye across the table and gave me a small nod. "You did the right thing," he said. And even though I wasn't sure I'd ever stop feeling that guilt, that old, familiar ache in my chest, I nodded back. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think I did." In the weeks that followed, everything felt different. There was a strange quiet in my life, like I'd finally stopped holding my breath. I blocked my mother's number, blocked her on every platform, and told the rest of the family that I didn't want to hear about her anymore. It was the first real boundary I'd ever set, and it felt like pulling out a splinter that had been festering for years. But even with the silence, the questions lingered. Some nights, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd made the right choice, wondering if I'd done enough to protect the girls, if I'd somehow made everything worse. Grandma told me those doubts were normal, that they'd fade with time. I wanted to believe her. I started seeing a therapist, just me this time. I needed to talk about all of it, the years of being the fixer, the brother who tried to be a parent when he was barely more than a kid himself. I talked about the anger, the guilt, the relief. My therapist said it was all part of healing, that cutting someone out doesn't erase the scars they leave behind. But I was learning to live with the scars. I was learning that I didn't have to carry her mistakes anymore. I spent more time with friends, with people who didn't know the whole messy history. It felt good to laugh again, to be around people who didn't see me as the kid who had to keep everyone together. I started reading more, picking up old hobbies I'd left behind when life got too heavy: sketching, playing guitar late at night in Grandma's basement, the sound of the strings soft and warm. Meanwhile, my mother moved on in her own way. I heard through the grapevine, secondhand gossip from cousins I didn't even talk to anymore, that she'd found someone new. Another man, another fresh start, someone to cling to, someone to tell her she was still worth loving. I didn't feel angry when I heard. I felt nothing, really. Just a dull acceptance that she was still the same, still chasing a version of love that would never fill the empty spaces inside her. It was sad, but it wasn't my burden anymore. One cold afternoon, I sat on the front porch of Grandma's house, a mug of coffee warming my hands. Noah sat beside me, his breath fogging in the air. "You think she'll ever really change?" he asked. I thought about it for a minute, watching the bare trees sway in the wind. "No," I said finally. "I think she'll keep looking for someone to tell her she's okay, but she won't ever really fix what's broken inside her." He nodded, his eyes steady on mine. "Then it's good we're done." "Huh?" "Yeah," I said, and for the first time, I really meant it. I knew there'd always be a part of me that wondered, what if she really meant it this time? What if she really was trying? But I also knew I couldn't live my life for her anymore. I had 3 sisters who needed me. I had my own life to build, my own heart to heal. So I sat there on the porch, breathing in the cold air, and let myself feel it, the relief, the ache, the freedom. I wasn't the scared kid in that old house anymore. I was just Lucas, 23 years old, a brother, a grandson, a man figuring out how to start again. And in that moment, that was enough. A few months passed. Life started to feel normal again, or at least as normal as it could be after everything. I got back into a routine. Early mornings at work, long walks in the evenings to clear my head, movie nights with the girls and grandma on the couch. For the first time in a long time, there was a quiet rhythm to my days that felt like peace. Then Ryan showed up. He'd been out of my life for almost 2 years. Ever since he left me right after graduation, we'd met in college, and for a while, he was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, funny, the kind of guy who could make me laugh even on the worst days. But he was also someone who always had one foot out the door. When he dumped me, he didn't even try to sugarcoat it. "You're just not what I'm looking for long-term," he said, his voice calm, almost gentle. "I need someone who fits better with my plans." I remember staring at him, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I'd spent years supporting him, helping him through depression, late-night study sessions, everything. But when he was done with me, he didn't even flinch. So I moved on. I thought I was done with him. But one afternoon, out of the blue, I got a text. Just his name popping up on my phone made my chest tighten. "Hey, can we talk?" it said. I ignored it at first, but he kept trying. Finally, I gave in. I told myself I'd hear him out, just to get some closure. We met at a coffee shop downtown, one of those cozy places with low lighting and soft music. He looked the same easy smile, same confident slouch in his chair. For a second, I almost let myself hope. But then he started talking. He told me about how he'd been dating someone else, how it didn't work out, how he'd been thinking about me. He said he'd made mistakes, that he missed what we had. "I was stupid," he said, his eyes big and sincere. "I didn't appreciate how much you were there for me." I just sat there, my hands wrapped around my coffee cup, listening. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that people could change. But the more he talked, the more I realized he wasn't really sorry. He was lonely. He was scared. And he wanted me to fill the hole that woman left behind. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. "Can we just start over?" he asked softly. "I know I messed up, but I'm different now." I pulled my hand away. "You're not different," I said, my voice low. "You're just alone." He frowned, like he couldn't understand what I meant. "Come on, Lucas," he said. "We were good together. You know that." I shook my head. "No, Ryan, we weren't. I was good for you, but you were never good for me." My voice didn't even shake. It felt calm, final. He tried to argue. He said he'd changed, that we could make it work, but I didn't want to hear it. I'd spent too many years giving everything I had to people who only saw me as a backup plan. My mother, my family, and now I'm not your second choice, I said quietly, standing up and gathering my things. "I'm not your safety net, not anymore." He looked stunned, like he hadn't expected me to be so sure. "Lucas, please," he started, but I was already turning away. As I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt something break free inside me. Like a weight I'd been carrying around for years had finally slipped off my shoulders. For so long, I'd let other people decide my worth. I'd measured myself by what I could give them, how much of myself I could sacrifice. But not anymore. That night, I went home and sat on the porch, the cold air stinging my skin. I thought about everything, my mother, my siblings, Ryan, all the ways I'd let myself be used. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt proud. Proud that I'd finally stood up for myself. Proud that I could walk away. I still had questions. Still had scars. But I also had hope. Because if I could say no to the people who had always taken me for granted, maybe I could start saying yes to the things that mattered. Yes to my sisters, who deserved a brother who wouldn't let anyone hurt them again. Yes to Grandma, who had given us all a safe place to land. And yes to myself, because for the first time, I felt like I was worth it. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. I'm not going back. Not to my mother, not to Ryan, not to anyone who can't see the worth in me beyond what I can give. And for the first time, that's enough.